8, State of Texas versus Joseph Sanchez Contreras. Can I have parties announced for the record of the state?
Brittany Sparks and Ryan Gerber,
For the defense?
Christine McDonald, Initiator, and Tanya Rivera.
All right. And I know everybody is used to standing, but if you all could remain seated for your objections, I don't take that as a sign of disrespect. It's easier for the microphones to pick up and for Brenda to hear if we're not standing. So are both parties ready to proceed, state?
Yes, Judge.
Defense?
Yes, Judge.
And defense, you're asking that the rule be invoked. That is not for opening statements, is it?
Just during the portion of the trial, Judge, during testimony.
All right, then the rule has been invoked. All right, are the jurors here?
Yes, they are.
All right, we're going to bring the jurors in. And defense, I don't intend to give away your strategy or anything, but if you're expecting to call witnesses, will they be available today?
Your Honor, the only, after discussing with my client, of course, when it's our turn, the only witness I intend to call if the state does not call them is Detective De La Rosa. But
All
I
right.
believe they're available.
All right,
He's available. We made him available, Judge, and we may call him. We're not positive yet. I guess we'll have him available either way. Either we'll call him today or we'll make him available for that.
all right, thank you.
Standing is going to be a hard.
Oh, you know
habit
who,
to break.
I will tell you, you know what? The first time I had to do that, not stand, was for Judge No, because he was on the civil side and they're the first courtrooms that had all the technology. And so he kept telling me over and over, do not stand, do not stand. And so finally, it was a 4-week trial. And I think finally by the 3rd week, I got out of the habit of standing. And then when I came back for the criminal side, I forgot. But now it just makes it easier for everybody to pick up the sound. Oh, and just remember, if you want to speak in private, to make sure you hold down the button on your microphone. So you have 2 microphones. So that one, you have to keep it pressed down when it turns red, and you also have that one. All right, but if you're asking questions of the witnesses, make sure that that green one is on, the handheld one. All right,
And if I don't want it, I have to push both these buttons.
yes. And the green one, if you push it one time, it will remain red. And the other one, you just have to hold it down for it to remain red. You're welcome. Yes.
All right.
Oh, please be seated. We stand for you. All right, everyone, please be seated. Was everyone able to find decent parking? Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the oath. I know everyone took an oath downstairs or on Zoom, but now this is the oath for this specific trial. So if I could have everyone raise your right hand, please. Do you and each of you solemnly swear or affirm in the case of the state of Texas versus Mr. Contreras, you will a true verdict render according to the law and the evidence, so help you God? All right, you can lower your hand. All right, state.
True bill of indictment.
Please, I'm sorry, please stand while they read the indictment though.
True bill of indictment. In the name and by authority of the state of Texas, the grand jury of Bexar County, state of Texas, duly organized and paneled and sworn as such at the November term 80/2020 of the Judicial District Court of said county in said court at said term, do present in and to said court that in the county and state aforesaid and anterior to the presentment of this indictment. On or about the 28th day of September 2020, Joseph Contreras, hereinafter referred to as defendant, while in the course of committing theft of property and with intent to obtain and maintain control of said property, did intentionally and knowingly threaten and place Alice Ozwicki in fear of imminent bodily injury and death, and the defendant did use and exhibit a deadly weapon, to wit, a knife, that in its manner of its use and intended use was capable of causing death and serious bodily injury against the peace and dignity of the state, undersigned foreman of the grand jury.
All right. Mr. Contreras, to that, how do you plead? All right, thank you. You may be seated. All right, state, do you have any opening statements?
Thanks, Judge.
You have-
May I please quote?
Yes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Today you're going to hear from 4 witnesses. The first witness you're going to hear from is the victim herself, Alice. She's going to tell you that on September 28th of 2020, she went to work. She went to work at the Family Dollar at 1826 Rigsby here in San Antonio, Texas. And while she was at work, she noticed one of the people in the store taking items from a candy shelf and the electronic shelf and sticking them in his jacket. When she confronted the gentleman, he began to yell at her, call her names, and then he pulled the knife out on her. She asked him to leave, told him she was going to call 911, and once she got 911 on the phone is when he finally decided to leave the store. Once he was leaving the store and outside of the front door, he again pulled the knife out on her and told her he knew what time she got off work and he was going to come back, he was going to get her. Next, you're going to hear from Officer Torres. He's going to tell you that when he arrived on scene, he spoke to the victim, Alice, and she told him what happened. She provided a description of the man who threatened her with the knife while he was stealing items. He let the other responding officers know the description of what to look for. And a short time later, Officer Prado is in the vicinity and is able to locate a man that matches the description the victim provided. You're going to hear from Officer Prado. He's going to tell you that he brought the man matching the description back to that Family Dollar store. And Alice was able to positively identify that was the man who pulled the knife out on her. Once Alice positively identified Joseph Contreras as the man who pulled the knife out on her, Officer Torres was able to locate a knife, the same knife he used, or same knife he pulled out on Alice. And at the end of the trial, and after you've heard all of the evidence in this case, we're going to ask that you find Joseph Contreras guilty of aggravated robbery. Thank you.
All right, defense.
May I please report?
Yes.
Present counsel. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Christine McDonald, and I represent this matter right here, Mr. Joseph Sanchez Contreras. Now, as you just heard the prosecutor tell you, Mr. Contreras is here today accused of an aggravated robbery that allegedly took place on September 28, 2020. Now, the prosecutor just got up here and she told you how she perceived that aggravated robbery occurred. You heard facts about a knife that was allegedly involved. You heard facts about items that were allegedly taken. And you heard the fact that there was only one witness that the state's going to call who was actually present when this incident supposedly took place. But the prosecutor left out a few details that I bet you'll find are pretty important. She left out the fact that when Officer Prado came in contact with Mr. Contreras that day, shortly after the incident, just a few blocks away from the store, the officers didn't find a single item that Ms. Osowicki claimed was taken from that store. She left out the fact that despite the fact that this is a place of business, and there was at least one other witness who Ms. Osowicki claims was present when this altercation took place, that person was never identified or spoken to. She left out the fact that no surveillance video was retrieved from that store that would show you today what actually happened at that Family Dollar. When you take into consideration everything she left out, what you'll be left with is a testimony of one witness, the complaining witness in this case, Ms. Alice Osowicki. And after you hear that testimony and the facts that you'll receive throughout the course of this trial, I am confident that you're going to be left with more questions than answers. I am confident that you're going to believe, as I do, that when someone's liberty is on the line, more should be done to convince you, the triers of fact, that my client is guilty. More should be done for a verdict worthy of confidence. And because of that, at the end of this trial, I'm going to ask you to be true to your oath as jurors. I'm going to ask you to follow the law, to hold the state to their burden, and to find my client not guilty. Thank you.
State, call your first witness, please.
State calls Alice Osowicki.
All right, can you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you can take a seat, and if you can push the chair to the microphone. And remember to keep your voice up so that ladies and gentlemen of the jury can hear you. And if you could state your name for the record.
Alice Osowicki.
Right, state.
And Judge, at this time, I think we need to approach briefly.
All right. All right, state.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. Alice, how are you currently employed?
Through Family Dollar.
And which location are you employed at?
It's 1826 Ridgeview Avenue. It's on the corner of Ridgeview and Rollins.
And is that here in San Antonio?
Yes.
County?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And how long have you worked at Family Dollar?
15 years,
And how long have you worked at that location?
5 years. I traveled to all of them now.
And do you remember September 28th of 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you working on that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And what happened while you were working?
When I was in the back, we call it recovering. That's getting the store back in order to look nice and neat. I seen him in the front, knowing that he's banned, and some of the
Objection, Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes. All right, state, you may proceed.
Okay, thank you, Judge. Okay, Alice, so you said you were working in the back, and you called it recovery.
yes.
And where you were working, could you see any other parts of the store?
Yes, as I look up the aisle, I see him with it's like where the candy and stuff is. I see him getting it, so I already know who he is. So I came up front and I'm watching him because I already kind of know what to do. And as he went down the aisle, he was stuffing it in his jackets. And then when I got to the other aisle and him coming up front, he no longer had it in his hands. And then he walked back a little bit and got on the soda aisle. And I asked him, could I have my merchandise back? And he was arguing with me that don't F with me, and I can't say all the words that he was saying because it was curse words. And another customer came and tried to help me because they heard us having a confrontation, and I just asked for a merchandise back. And him and the other guy got into it, and then he pulled out his a blade, a black knife out of his side, where his jacket was. When he opened it up to pull that out, you could see all the candy and some other stuff that he stole. And he was waving it and flicking the knife with me and another customer told us to leave him effing alone, or he's gonna F us up, certain words that I don't want to
Judge,
repeat.
I'm gonna object to narrative.
All right, gotta be sustained.
Okay, Alice, so you're working in the back of the store, and you said you noticed him stealing candy from the front of the store, correct?
Right.
And when you noticed him stealing the candy, you said other items, Is this when you begin to approach?
Yeah, after I
I'm sorry,
went the other way to
I'm
make
sorry,
sure.
just 1 second. When someone makes an objection, just stop speaking so I can rule out the objection. What is your objection?
Leaving the witness, Your Honor.
All right, that'll be overruled. You may answer.
Okay, so. After you noticed him taking the items, is this when you approached him?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and
But I had to make sure that it was on his property.
and what do you mean by on his property?
And that it was stolen and that he wasn't gonna pay for it. I just wanted my merchandise back.
And then when you finally caught up to him, where were you?
In the silver aisle,
And that's when you confront him,
yes.
and what does he tell you?
He told me to leave him effing alone, don't F with him. And that's when another customer, a customer that's always in the store, was having confrontation with him.
And did he have the knife out at this point?
Not until we both of us was confronting him about our merchandise, well, my merchandise.
Okay. So when does he pull out the knife?
When he started cursing at us, and then he pulled out the knife, when he opened up his jacket, that's when I could tell all the stuff was on him. It was a black one, and he also had a red bandana as well. I think the bandana was covering the knife.
How far away were you standing from him when he pulled out the knife?
Probably about 2 or 3 feet.
And what did you do at this point?
I was telling the customer to leave it alone, it wasn't worth it, and for him to leave the store. And then I felt threatened because he had put it not only on me, but as a customer also. So I didn't want no confrontation or nothing to happen with neither one of us, or the rest of the customers that's in the store, because that's what makes it worse. That's how sometimes it's hard to confront a theft or something like that, because other people are watching us. You know, I don't want our customers to be scared.
And you said that you felt threatened for
Yes, ma'am.
yourself. After he pulls out the knife, does he stay there?
Yeah, until they got into a confrontation and I told them I was calling police. As they was both arguing, him and the customer, I was on the phone calling the police. And I was telling them of the issue that we was having and that I needed them to come immediately and that he would not leave at all.
And did he leave at this point?
That's when he wasn't gonna leave until I got on the phone, and I guess he could hear our conversation. And
And
I also put it on speaker too as well. And I normally, I don't, if I have theft, I'll act like I'm on the phone or pretend, sometimes just to get the person out the store, but this time I really felt threatened, so I had to actually call instead of pretending.
and you said he started to leave once he realized you.
Yes, cause as I was on the phone, I put it on speaker so he could actually hear. Other times I don't put it on speaker because I'm making a fake phone call, but this time I did.
And does he do anything as he's walking out of the store?
He put the knife and the bandana back in his pocket and he walked out the door. And then I was still on the phone talking to the police or the dispatcher. And then when I was making sure everybody was all right, he was still in the parking lot, he pulled it back out again, said he'd return for me when I got off work.
And when he walked out of the store, had he given back the items that he had stolen?
No,
When he gets outside of the door, he said he pulls out the knife again.
yes, telling me he was coming back for me.
Okay, and Alice, do you remember what the gentleman was wearing on that day?
He had on a blue and black bandana, like a beanie hat, but it's kind of a big one, a black jacket, jeans. I'm not remembering the shirt really because he had it zipped up. The only time he unzipped it is when he was getting the knife and stuff like that. I guess he was already khaki on everything. That's how he had all our merchandise, because it was inside of the jacket, which was black. Brown boots, and that's all I can remember that I told the officer.
And do you see the man that pulled the knife out on you here at court today?
Yes.
And can you please point to him
He's right there.
and identify him by a piece of clothing?
The black jacket.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant in open court. And Alice, you mentioned another customer. Do you know if that customer stayed until the police arrived?
Yes, he stayed, but then he didn't want to talk to police either. I can't tell you why. He just didn't want to, and I'm not asking to be a witness, and sometimes you can't. Even another manager at my job did not want to have anything to do with this. But if we keep letting it go on and not coming to court or talking to y'all, it's gonna continue.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Alice, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 1 through 6. Can you look at these? And tell me if they fairly and accurately depict.
Yeah, that's my store. This is the aisle I was down when I seen him, this is the candy. No, this is the aisle I was down, and this is the candy I could see. And then as I came up to see what was going on, he walked that way, and that's where the soda aisle is. And that's the same thing here. That's the front view where all the candy is. That's the candy, this is the candy that, the section he was in. And he got merchandise from here too, but I now seen him take this, but I didn't see him take this, but the cashier did. And that's a picture of him.
Okay, and is that a picture of him on that night?
That's a picture of him on that night. I don't remember the shirt because I only seen him when he flashed it over, undid his jacket. So I couldn't give a description of that.
Your Honor, State moves to admit State Exhibits 1 through 6, pending objection. Objection, Your Honor.
All right, State's Exhibits 1 through 6 is admitted without objection.
And permission to publish, Your Honor.
Granted.
Disconnected this one.
Okay, we're gonna do this old fashioned way. Okay, Alex, this is State Exhibit 1, which you've already reviewed, correct?
All right, do you need her to step down?
Whichever the court refers to.
No, what is easiest for the jurors to hear?
There you go.
We got it.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Sorry.
no problem.
Alice. So you said this is the store that you work at, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And is that where the incident occurred?
Yes.
Now, this is State's Exhibit 2. What are we looking at here?
This is the aisles, and it happened on this aisle right here.
And
Well, this is
Alice,
the aisle I seen them. I was down further.
Alice, I think if you touch the screen, you can mark on it for the jury.
Right here. Okay, that's the aisle, but I was further down, and you can kind of see the candy aisle. So I noticed him, and I knew there was gonna be an incident. So as I walked up, he was already putting the stuff in his jacket. That was just a candy. I didn't see the other merchandise, the cashier did. So as I came up, he walked down this aisle, and he no longer had the candy in his hands. He had already put it on him.
Okay. And is that the aisle that you approached him on?
Yes, this is the aisle that I approached him on, and we got down to the soda aisle.
And is the soda aisle still on that aisle, but further down?
Yes, it's just further down in the second section.
And what is this a picture of?
That's the front of the store.
And
And the candies, we have candy here and candy on the opposite side. And that's the section where he was getting all the candy.
and is this in the front of the store?
Yes, ma'am. As you can see, because we always recover is putting it back up. If you see where the Reese's is right here, he took that, he took the Hershey's. And I'm not exact, I think it was the something, the on the bottom, the Hershey's right here.
And then we all heard you say that
I didn't see
you
this
didn't see him
happen.
take this.
I
correct?
couldn't tell you, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna say something that I don't know, but the cashier seeing him take
Objection, your
merchandise. from
second, Your Honor.
Gotta be sustained.
Okay, Alice. And then what is this a picture of?
That's a picture of him.
And is that what he was wearing on the day of the incident?
Yes, ma'am.
That's okay.
Okay. Okay, Alice. So you said you didn't see the electronic
No, I
area
didn't.
get stolen,
No.
but you saw the candy bar,
Right.
correct? And when you approached him, he had the candy bar?
Yes, and he had the other ones, but I couldn't tell exactly which ones they was.
Okay.
And I didn't see him put those, I just seen the candy, but he still had it on his, when he opened up his jacket. But I couldn't tell you, because we have specific SKUs and it tells you which electronics it is, so I couldn't tell you which ones.
And Alice, are you aware if there's surveillance video available in your store?
Yes,
And are you in charge of maintaining that?
yes. In fact, we viewed it when the officer got there, and we burned a copy of it.
Okay. We'll pass the witness. Your Honor.
All right, defense. Yeah.
Good morning, Ms. Osowicki.
Good morning.
My name is Christine McDonald. You said earlier on direct that that you've been working at the Family Dollars for 15 years.
Yes, ma'am.
And during that time, I'm sure you've come in contact with a lot of difficult customers, huh?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you also mentioned that that day you were working in recovery,
Yes.
and that's in the back of the store.
Yes, we recovered the whole store, but I was just in that particular area.
Okay, and this incident occurred at around 6:30 p.m., right?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
What time does your store open?
It opens at 8 a.m. At that time, 8 a.m. Now we changed our time, it's 9 a.m., but at that time it was 8.
And I'm sure that from 8 a.m. to around 6:30 p.m., plenty of customers went in the store.
Yes,
Your store is pretty busy,
yes,
and you can't stay in the front of the store at all times, right?
that's right.
And plenty of people go in the store, they purchase items,
Yes,
they purchase candy,
yes,
they purchase electronics.
yes.
On a given day, how many employees are at work at your store?
Usually 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening.
Okay, so that's you plus 2 other people at least.
One other person.
One other person.
Unless it's holidays, then we have more.
Okay, and that person's in charge of the cashier? Cash register?
Yes,
Okay, and while you're working, I'm sure you're pretty busy in your day-to-day activities at that store.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you're not constantly watching the express aisle where these items were located.
No, ma'am.
So you couldn't tell the jury today if other people had purchased candy that day?
Yes.
You could tell them?
No, I can't tell. I just noticed what he had on him.
Okay, and you also couldn't tell the jury what electronics were purchased that day either, could you?
No, I couldn't tell.
Okay,
Only if I viewed it on what was bought, I can go to a few things and it tells us what merchandise, but why would I do that?
okay. Fair enough. I'm going to show you again what's already been admitted into evidence by the state. So this is the area where you stated earlier that the candy was stolen,
Right,
and that's what you referred to as the express aisle.
yes,
Okay, and this is the same location, kind of with a more long distance view,
right,
showing more of the store.
right,
And that area would be right along here.
right.
Can you please point to the number of surveillance cameras that are in this picture for the jury? You can go ahead and circle them just as a state.
3, but they're up on top on the ceiling.
Okay, so let me help you out. So there's one right here, right?
Yes,
And then there's another one right here,
yes,
and then there's one right here,
yes,
and one directly above the express aisle, right?
right,
Okay, and that would have captured any items that Mr. Contreras would have taken from the store that day, correct?
correct.
And you mentioned that the officers downloaded the surveillance video?
Yeah, we took a film of it and they burnt it.
They burnt it to a disc.
Yes.
Was that the first day this incident occurred? Or
No,
when
that
did-
was the second day,
So
the
that
day
was-
after.
That was with Detective Delaware.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you also mentioned, let me ask you this. Did you mentioned earlier that your store is pretty busy?
Yes,
Plenty of customers came in that day?
yes.
And
We
then-
were pretty busy too because, I think it was like the end of the month. Yeah, so at the end of the month, we usually do, that was a busy day for us.
And your store is not that big, right? Compared to like an HEB or Walmart. for
Right,
instance?
no, but it's a big it's a big Family Dollar, it's not compared to HEB, but it's still a big, Family Dollar.
Around how many aisles would you say are in that store?
32,
Okay. And do you know how many officers responded to the scene that day?
I believe 4,
Okay, and was it pretty quick after you called 911?
yes, sir.
And were there customers in the store when this incident took place?
Yes.
And did any of those officers try to talk to those customers?
I believe the 2 of them, the gentleman that he had confrontation with, he would have nothing to do with it.
Okay, but that is a regular customer, right? You told the
Yes.
officers that,
Mhm.
so you knew that customer?
Yes.
You would probably have seen him in the days following,
Oh, yeah.
and someone came back to follow up. Detective De La Rosa came back to the store to follow up.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you give him the name of that person?
I don't believe so, I can't tell you directly. And the gentleman didn't want to have nothing to do with it, I guess because he had an argument with him and both of them was doing, so.
Objection, Your Honor, may we approach?
Yes. All right, defense.
Ms. Osowiki, without going into any hearsay statements, you mentioned that there was a cashier that was present when this incident supposedly took place as well.
Yes, ma'am.
To your knowledge, did the police officer speak with that customer? I don't want to know why. I want to know, did they speak to her or him?
I couldn't tell you because I was speaking with an officer myself, so I'm not sure if they spoke with him.
Okay, and she would have been in the front when this incident took place?
Yes,
Okay. Now you mentioned that you saw a red bandana as well,
yes,
and this was back in 2020 when COVID was pretty, those levels were pretty high, right?
yes.
So it's not unusual for people to carry a red bandana, maybe to cover their face or
It
whatever.
could be.
Okay. Now, when the officers got there, you were able to give your story to them pretty clearly, right?
Yes.
You weren't crying.
No.
You weren't shaking.
Like I was a little disturbed. I couldn't say I was shaking, but I was very disturbed. It takes a lot for me to call the police. And it happens like every day. I can catch 4 or 5 people a day shoplifting, but it doesn't mean I'm gonna call the police because I'm not gonna waste their time because they're gonna leave. But this incident shook me up so much that I had to.
Do you remember speaking to Officer Torres on the day of the incident?
Yes,
Okay, do you remember telling Officer Torres that you were not scared of my client because they will tell you that they're going to, but they don't? And do you also remember telling Officer Torres that you have confrontations every day with people, you're used to it, you've called on different things before, you're scared of, and that you're not scared of little incidents like this?
no, it just, little incidents is something that I know is not gonna take place in my store, or nobody's ever pulled a knife out on me. So this is a completely different incident. I haven't had nobody pull a knife out on me.
Okay,
So that's a totally different reason why I had to call SAPD.
so you're saying that on that day, you did not say that you're not scared of him because they'll tell you they're gonna do something, but they don't?
No, when people say they're gonna do something, it's not, how can I put it? I'm not always scared, but the quiet ones I'm scared of. But with him pulling out a knife on me, that really scared me.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to introduce the body cam of Officer Torres as impeachment evidence for a prior inconsistent statement. This witness is just
All right,
testified.
you can approach, please. if you all can be back here at 11:15. You've heard some evidence in this case. You're not allowed to deliberate or discuss with anyone. I don't expect this to be a media case or on the news, but again, as my previous instructions were to you, if someone tries to speak to you about any of this, ignore it. If you see anything, ignore it, and make sure you have your badges prominently displayed so people will know not to speak to you about this. So we're going to come back in at 11:15. All right, everyone, please rise for the jurors. All right, everyone, please be seated. Defense, you're on cross-examination, you may proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Osuiki, you've had an opportunity now to review the body cam that I was referring to earlier.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you recall making a statement on September 28th, 2020 to Officer Goetz?
Yes,
Okay. Do you recall making that statement at the Family Dollar, which is where you're stating this incident took place?
yes. But I wasn't referring specifically to him.
Do you recall, you were not referring to my client?
No, we was having a discussion. I was talking about the incidents that I have in the store that I'm not always scared of,
Okay.
what goes on.
Do you remember stating, but, well, let me ask you this. As Officer Goetz is questioning you, he's asking you about my client, right?
Yes, but
He's
we
asking you about the incident, right?
Yes,
Okay, and do you remember stating that sometimes, well, do you remember Officer Goetz asking you if my client pulled out a knife and threatened you?
yes,
And you responded, yes, he threatened me that he was gonna come back and F me up like he was looking for my car, but he didn't see it today. Which I am not scared of him because they will tell you that they are not, but they are not going to. Do you recall stating that?
not specifically. I know I
Your Honor,
said
at
something
this
in that,
time,
Wait, just 1 second.
Your Honor, at this time, I would
Just
like.
1 second,
Oh, sorry.
let the witness finish answering the question.
I know I was telling him that I'm not always scared when people say stuff, but it didn't refer exactly to him. And he did pull out a knife. That's the only reason why I called the police.
But you specifically stated you are not scared of him, correct?
I have to hear the statement because I was not referring exactly to him.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd ask to play that portion of the body cam.
You may play that portion.
Yeah, he told me that he's gonna come back and left me up for the doctor. And like he was looking for my car, which he knows, but he was. But he told me, which I'm not scared of you, because they'll tell you, but they're not going to.
Okay. And when you stated,
I said, dear ma'am,
you said him, would you like us to play it again?
it doesn't matter.
Okay, and when you were saying, when he was looking for my car, you're referring to the defendant.
Yes,
And when you're saying that he pulled a knife on you, you're referring to the defendant.
that's right.
But you're stating today, now that we're in court, that when you're saying you're not afraid of him, you're not referring to my client.
I'm not afraid of them, but it's like I'm not afraid of all the theft that I have. But I must have been if I called the police.
Now that you're on the stand, you're recalling that you were in fear of imminent bodily injury or death.
Yes, I was scared. Otherwise I wouldn't have called.
But when you were asked at the scene, that's not what you told officers.
I was referring to other thefts as well, ma'am. I can't go into detail, but I know what I said.
Okay. And you also mentioned to Officer Torres that you were concerned about the other customers.
That's right.
And you said that's why you called the police, because you were concerned about the other customers, right?
Yes, majority of the time they get out the store, but when him threatening me and another customer with a knife, he has to get out the store. A majority of the time, they'll just leave. I'm not gonna have a confrontation with nobody and hurt my customers or myself.
Okay, and part of that concern is that you didn't want to have to call the police to the location, right?
No, but he pulled out a knife on me, so what am I supposed to do?
What I'm getting at is your concern for your customers also has to do, you want them to be comfortable in the store, right?
That's right,
The store loses money if the customers don't go there, right?
that's true.
And if the officers on this are there in the parking lot, that might deter customers from going to your store, right?
Well, I could have gotten hurt, so I had to do what's best for me and my customers. And then he was having confrontation with another customer. So that's what I had to do, and I did that at the moment.
Now you were not able to give an exact amount of what was taken, correct?
True,
And you estimated that it was around maybe $30 or $40.
probably around that. I couldn't add the, all the electronics, because I don't know which electronics it was. So I can't make that statement.
So that's about $30 or $40 worth of candy bars.
Plus two of the things, and I know, I seen at least two of the white things that has electronics in it, and they're around $8, $10.
That's still a lot of candy bars for him to stuff in a jacket, right? Along with the
I
electronics.
just can't tell you what his instant was when he took it, but I know what I seen.
Okay, and he didn't have a bag or anything on it,
No,
and he didn't leave the items in the store. You're
No,
still, you
he still
testified that
had
you
them.
left with them.
and the fact is the same jacket that he's wearing now, and the same shirt.
Your Honor, we'll pass the witness.
State,
Nothing, sorry, but nothing further.
all right, is this witness excused or subject to recall?
Excuse from the state judge, excuse from the defense
All
judge.
right, thank you. The rule has been invoked. What that means is you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state and the defense. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you for coming in.
Okay,
Your
thank you.
excuse.
Appreciate it.
State, call your next witness.
State calls Officer Torres.
All right, if you could raise your right hand for me, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, if you could take a seat, make sure you keep your voice up so the court reporter and the jurors can hear, and if you could state your name for the record.
Robert Torres,
State,
Good afternoon, officer. How are you currently employed?
Patrol Officer, San Antonio Police Department,
And how long have you been employed with San Antonio Police Department?
19 months.
Are you a certified peace officer?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you working on September 28th of 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you in uniform
Yes, ma'am.
in a marked patrol vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you on September 28th of 2020, were you dispatched to a theft that occurred on Rigsby Road?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you know the location that you were dispatched to?
It was a dollar den, I believe it was it's gonna be the dollar store on the Wrigley.
And officer, you have a copy of your report with you, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you can use that to refresh your memory, but please don't read from it.
Okay,
So go ahead and look at it and let me know the location you were dispatched to.
this is a Family Dollar, man.
And do you know the address?
826 Bridgeview?
And is that here in San Antonio, Bexar County, Texas?
Yes, ma'am.
And what happened when you arrived on scene?
I made contact with the caller, the victim. She was the assistant manager at the location. And she let me know what happened with the arrested person, which he wasn't at the location at the time. She told me what happened, what he stole, and basically what happened, and then I put it out over the radio, the description of the suspect.
And what information did she provide you?
Provided me,
Say,
Sustained.
Based on that information, what description was dispatched over the radio?
this, his clothing description, a backpack that he was wearing, and his, he was all.
And after you dispatched that on the radio, what happened after that?
I was still gathering information from her, and I had another cover officer go, he went to go look for him.
Do you know if that cover officer ever located an individual?
Yes, ma'am.
What happened when the individual was located?
He was contacted, the cover officer contacted him, he was detained, he was brought back to the location while I was still contacting the victim.
And did you speak to the individual that was brought back?
Yes, ma'am.
Did the individual that was brought back match the description that you dispatched?
Yes, ma'am.
Officer, you stated you were speaking to the victim. Did you speak to any other witnesses at the scene?
There was a gentleman that he was telling me that he did see what was going on, but he ended up leaving. I wasn't able to speak to him. But I was mainly talking to the victim,
And do you know what the victim's name was?
Alice. I don't remember us.
And would her last name be in your report?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you refer to your report?
Yes. I don't know how to say your last name. It starts with an O. You can try to say it. Oops.
Or you could spell it, officer.
It's gonna be Oscar
Oh,
Sierra.
excuse me, just 1 second.
Yes.
Brenda doesn't like when you do that for her to type it down. Just spell out the letters and not do the Oscar Sierra.
Okay.
All right,
Yes,
thank you.
Okay, so it's gonna be OSOWIECKI. Middle name Marie.
And were you assigned as the reporting officer in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
And you wrote the report, and it has what you did and what some of the other officers did, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And officer, the person that you guys took into custody, were you able to identify him?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you know what his name was?
Yes, ma'am.
What was the name?
Joseph Contreras.
And after you, took him into custody, did you search his person?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you find anything?
I did not locate the stuff that was missing. But a knife was located on him.
Do you? And officer, is there typically a case number assigned to each incident that you respond to?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is the case, SAPD case number in this case?
The case number is gonna be SAPD 20184841.
We'll pass the witness, Judge.
Defense.
Good morning, Officer Flores.
Morning.
So you were dispatched to the Family Dollar store for a disturbance involving a knife, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you arrived on scene, you made contact with the complaining witness in this case, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that complaining witness is Alice Osowicki.
Yes, ma'am.
And as you were talking to her, her demeanor was pretty calm, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And she was not shaking.
She was not shaking.
She was not crying.
No, ma'am.
She was speaking to you pretty casually, wasn't she?
Yes, ma'am.
And she was not showing really any visible signs of distress, was she?
No, ma'am.
And she was able to answer your questions quite easily.
Yes, ma'am.
She was able to give you a description of my client,
Yes, ma'am.
and she pointed out which items she believed were taken from the store, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And those items were candies and electronics.
Yes, ma'am.
And those candies and electronics that were supposedly taken were located in the express aisle at the front of the store, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And Alice walked you into the store to point out where these candies and electronics were located, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I'm going to show you what's already been admitted into evidence. Thank you. This has been admitted as State's Exhibit 4. This was the area where she, bring that down just a little bit. This was the area where she said the candies were taken, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And there's a lot of candies missing there, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Pretty much all over the place.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and just a picture that's a little farther away, that area would have been right around here, right? Right here?
On the other side of where the gentleman standing?
Yes,
Yes,
near
ma'am.
the cash register.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and let's count the surveillance cameras, all right? There's one right there, and one right there, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and at least one of those cameras would have been directed at that area, right?
I don't know.
Well, it's not uncommon for stores to, have more cameras in the front near the cashier, right?
I don't know.
Near the cash register. And as she was pointing out what was supposedly stolen, Alice wasn't really sure which items had been taken, right?
Correct.
And you weren't able to document what items were exactly taken, right?
Correct.
You weren't able to print a receipt showing exactly how much those items amounted to
Correct.
because you didn't have a clear answer from Alice.
Correct.
And during your investigation, without going into any statements that are hearsay, did you learn that another customer was involved?
No, ma'am.
Alice did not tell you that there was another customer that was confronted by my client?
The one that I told you the one that he tried, that he talked, I didn't get to talk to him.
Okay. And were you aware that that customer was actually a regular customer at that Family Dollar?
No, ma'am.
Were you aware that he or she frequented that store pretty regularly?
No, ma'am.
And without going into any statements Alice may have made, did you ask her the name of this customer?
No, ma'am.
So you're unaware, because you didn't ask, if she would have been able to provide more information, which would have led you to question that customer.
No, ma'am.
Did you try to see if she could contact the customer?
No, ma'am, I was trying to get surveillance.
Okay. Did you ask her if she had a phone number for this customer?
No, ma'am.
And did you do any follow-up at all regarding that mysterious customer?
No, ma'am.
And while you were talking to the complaining witness, Officer Prado and his partner found my client a few blocks from the Family Dollar, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And it wasn't too long before you were notified that a suspect was located?
Yes, ma'am.
No, it wasn't too long, or yes, it was long?
It wasn't too long, ma'am.
Okay. And my client was brought back to the Family Dollar, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And while my client was being detained in the patrol car, you were asking him some questions, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And he answered those questions?
Yes, ma'am.
And he was not argumentative when you questioned him, right?
At times he was, yes, ma'am.
Well, he was not being combative, right?
No, it wasn't.
And you didn't have to restrain him for being aggressive.
No, ma'am.
And while my client was being detained in the patrol car, you were waiting for a detective to arrive on scene, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You were waiting for quite some time for that detective, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And during that time, did you ever go into the store to see what other employees were working that day?
No, ma'am.
Would it surprise you to know that there was at least one other employee working that day?
No, ma'am.
I mean, obviously Alice couldn't have been the only employee in the store, correct? She can't run the Family Dollar by herself.
Yes, ma'am.
And while you're waiting for the detective, you didn't take the time to go and talk to those employees
No, ma'am.
to see if they could give you more information about this investigation?
No, ma'am, I didn't.
And once again, I showed you the photos and the express aisle, and that's right near the cash register, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And there should be at least a cashier who would have probably been in that area, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you didn't talk to the cashier to see if she saw the incident.
I don't recall, ma'am.
And according to Alice, the knife was pulled out at the back of the store, right?
I don't recall or seeing that.
Well, do you know if the altercation with the knife happened in an area where there was surveillance camera available?
I asked her for surveillance. She said that she'll get it at a different time.
Well, the Family Dollar isn't a very big store, right? As compared to, say, H-E-B or Walmart.
Correct.
And it doesn't have as many aisles as those larger stores that I just mentioned.
Correct.
And an incident like the one described here, that would probably cause quite a commotion in a small store like that, wouldn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
It would probably get the attention of any customer or employee that would have been in that store, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And if there was yelling or weapons involved, people in the store would probably pay attention to that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
For their own safety,
Yes, ma'am.
out of curiosity.
Yes, ma'am.
And that includes customers as well.
Yes, ma'am.
And at any point while you were waiting for the detective to arrive, did you ask any of the customers in the store if they witnessed the incident?
When I arrived at the store, I didn't see too many customers.
Okay. And on that first day, while you're waiting for the detective, did you go to the back to see if maybe you could review the surveillance camera footage?
I asked her for the surveillance and we tried to get into the office room and she couldn't get the footage.
Okay, but you yourself didn't go back there and try
No,
to do it. Okay, but you were waiting for quite some time and you could have tried, right?
no, ma'am. I can't get into it. I can't access that.
Okay. And you walked through that store several times, right?
It's the general aisle from the cashier to the, where the office is at.
Okay, but along the way from the cashier to the office, you walked under several surveillance cameras, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at some point, did Detective Petrowski arrive on scene?
Yes, ma'am.
He was the detective who, I guess, initially investigated this case.
Yes, ma'am.
And you filled him in on what you learned at the location, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you followed him in the back of the store while you talked to the complaining witness?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were standing close by him while he was conducting his investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
And once again, Alice pointed out where the items were supposedly taken from the store, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and to your knowledge, did Detective Petrowski attempt to talk to other employees at the store?
I don't recall, ma'am.
And to your knowledge, did Detective Petrowski attempt to establish if other customers were present in the store that day?
I don't recall, ma'am.
To your knowledge, did Detective Petrowski ask Alice the name of the customer involved in the altercation?
I don't recall, ma'am.
And let me ask you this, how many officers were on scene that day?
I don't recall, ma'am.
Okay, well, you had a partner with you, right?
Yes, ma'am.
An officer, so that's two, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then Officer Prado went and located my client off the location,
Yes, ma'am.
and he had a partner with him,
Yes, ma'am.
so that's four, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then there was a detective, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's at least five people.
Yes, ma'am.
To your knowledge, did any of those people view the surveillance video that day?
Not to my knowledge, ma'am.
To your knowledge, did any of those people attempt to locate any other witnesses that could have been shown to the jury and provide evidence in this case?
I don't recall, ma'am.
And my client was detained and brought back to the store, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And he was cooperative when he was taken out of the vehicle, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And when he was taken out of the vehicle, you asked to search him again, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So at this time, at this point, my client's been searched twice.
Yes, ma'am.
And he wasn't combative as you were searching him, right?
He was being verbally combative, but yes, ma'am.
Well, he didn't resist you searching him, right?
No, ma'am.
And you were searching for items that were allegedly taken from the store,
Yes, ma'am.
but you didn't find any of those items on my client, right?
No, ma'am.
You didn't find any candies,
No candies.
no electronics,
No electronics.
and you didn't find anything illegal on my client either, right?
No, ma'am.
And since nothing was found on my client, don't you think retrieving surveillance footage would have been pretty important to establish the theft occurred?
Yes, ma'am.
And at any point on the scene, did you learn that any of those surveillance cameras that I've pointed out several times now were not in working order?
No, ma'am.
Did you ask anyone?
I asked and she said she would try to get the surveillance tape.
And once you do your initial investigation at the scene and the officers are cleared to leave the location, are you in charge of following up with further investigation?
No, ma'am.
Okay, that case is assigned to a detective, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And in this case, there were two detectives assigned to this, right?
Not that I'm aware of, ma'am.
Well, Detective Petrowski, he arrived on the scene, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then Detective De La Rosa went the next day to supposedly look at the cameras, right?
Not that I'm aware of, ma'am.
Okay. And Detective Petrowski, he's retired today, right?
Not that I'm aware of, ma'am.
Well, assuming that there's just one detective on this case, he could have gone and retrieved surveillance, right?
I don't know, ma'am.
You don't know in an investigation if a detective can go and retrieve surveillance?
Well, once I turn my report and the detective takes over, I don't know what he does after that, ma'am.
Fair enough. So I guess you'd also be unaware if that detective could go and identify other potential witnesses after the initial incident.
I don't know, ma'am.
Okay. Well, would you agree with me when I said that once the detective gets the case, their investigation is not limited to the day of the incident, is it?
Yes, ma'am.
They can follow up, right?
Yes, ma'am.
On these issues that I'm questioning you on right now.
Yes, ma'am.
As witness.
State,
Just a few questions, Your Honor. Officer, can you force someone to be involved in an investigation?
No, ma'am.
And the mysterious customer that the defense is referring to, did he leave before you were able to identify him?
Yes, ma'am.
Nothing further, Judge.
Just brief, Your Honor.
Mhm.
Officer thought is you can't force someone to be involved, but you can bother asking at least, right?
Yes, ma'am.
It wouldn't take much effort on y'all's part to at least ask, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And even though he left the location, there's other means of trying to identify those types of witnesses, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, you handle cases all the time, don't you?
Yes, ma'am.
And it requires you to do a little bit of digging, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Because these issues are important.
Yes, ma'am.
This is a very serious case we have here, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
That's the witness, Judge.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Excuse me, Mr. Excuse from the defense.
All right, the rule has been invoked. What that means is you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state and defense. Do you understand?
Yes.
All right, thank you. State, call your next witness.
State House Officer Prado.
All right, could you raise your right hand for me, please? You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, you can lower your hand. Please make sure that you speak up, have a seat, so that and speak up so that the jurors and the court reporter can hear you. Can you state your name for the record?
My name is Michael.
All right, and if you could make sure you speak up.
Yes, ma'am.
State.
And officer, if you need to, you can adjust that microphone. To bring it a little closer.
Okay.
Officer Prado, how are you currently employed?
For that SAP,
And how long have you been employed by San Antonio Police Department?
just over 2 years.
And are you a certified peace officer?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you working on September 28th of 2020?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you in uniform
Yes, ma'am.
and in a marked patrol vehicle?
Correct.
And were you dispatched to an incident that occurred off of 1826 Rixby Avenue?
Yes, ma'am.
And what happened when you arrived on scene?
I initially arrived on scene to the granddaughter, and one of the officers were right on scene, and they gave a description of the suspect that was involved in the incident. So me and my partner, we left the location and proceeded to search, did a search of the location for the suspect, and then we made contact with one of the suspects eventually.
Okay, you were able to locate someone that matched the description in the vicinity, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you do once you located that person?
We detained them, I got a positive ID, and I contacted the handling officer. I'm like, hey, would you like me to relocate them to the incident, and to relocate to the incident location?
And did you have any other involvement besides taking him back to the location?
No, ma'am.
Where did you locate the individual?
I believe it was at 3400 block of Roland Avenue.
And,
Florida.
and do you know about how far that is from the Family Dollar?
I could not tell you that.
Are we talking, miles and miles away, or is it relatively in the same area?
It's in the same area.
We'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Defense.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Officer Prado. So, you just stated that you weren't sure where you found my client, right?
I believe it was like third corner block of Grigsby Avenue, Rolling Avenue,
Okay, but my client was on foot, right?
correct,
He wasn't in a vehicle,
correct.
and you weren't out for too long before you were able to locate the client, right?
I could not tell you the exact time, but it wasn't, within 10-15 minutes, I believe.
Around 10-15 minutes, you're saying? Okay, so that's not long, right?
No,
And you guys responded to the scene fairly quickly as well, right?
I believe so.
Okay. And my client was found just a few blocks from the store.
I said I don't know the exact proximity, but he was found in the vicinity.
And as you're driving and looking for him and you finally spot him, my client didn't see police officers approaching him, right?
I don't recall if he saw us or not.
Well, my client didn't try to run from you guys, right?
No, ma'am.
And when you stopped and you approached him, he stopped, right?
I believe so.
He followed your commands.
Yes, ma'am.
He didn't try to run, did he?
Not that I recall.
And you asked for my client's name, and he truthfully told you his name, right?
I believe so.
And you asked him for his date of birth, and he truthfully gave you his date of birth, right?
I believe so.
And at some point, you or your partner put handcuffs on my client, right?
Correct.
You detained him.
Correct.
My client didn't resist that, right?
No, ma'am.
And at some point, you and your partner began questioning my client about what occurred at the Family Dollar.
I don't recall that we questioned him about the incident.
Well, you did ask him some questions, right?
I believe so.
And my client answered those questions that you asked him.
I believe so.
And while you're talking to my client, you're receiving information from other officers who were at the scene through the radio, right?
Correct.
And you were informed of what was allegedly stolen from the Family Dollar.
At the time, I don't recall exactly the new exactly what had been taken. It just, there was something that said items were taken.
Okay. And at some point, you asked to search my client.
I believe so.
Did you find any candy bars on my client?
I do not recall that.
Okay. Did you find an iPhone charger on my client or other electronics?
I do not recall.
And so you don't recall, you were there to question a suspect about items that were stolen from a store, but you're saying you didn't know what those items were.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Your purpose of searching my client, part of it was to see if there were any items on him that were taken from the store. But you're saying now that you had no idea what those items were.
Like I said, we searched him, I asked for this, we got a search, see what items he had on him, and then I believe we just verified if these items were matching the ones that were taken at the location.
So you could have called the officers on the scene to ask, hey, what was taken from the store? I'm searching this client, this suspect, right?
Correct.
What did you find on him? Do you remember?
No, ma'am, I was unable to see my body cam. I don't remember what it pulled up from it.
Well, after you searched my client, you had to transport him back to the Family Dollar, right?
Correct.
And you have your report in front of you today,
Yes, ma'am.
and that report's pretty important, right?
Yes,
It documents what you did,
yes,
who you spoke to,
yes.
what you found.
It does not say anything of what I found.
Okay, but that's important, right? I mean, if you would have found something that was taken from the store, you would have put it on your report, wouldn't you?
I believe so.
And it's not on your report?
No, ma'am.
So it's safe to say you didn't find anything on him that was taken from the store?
No, ma'am.
And after you searched my client, you had to transport him back to the Family Dollar, right?
Correct.
And he was cooperative in returning to the Family Dollar, wasn't he?
Yes, ma'am.
He didn't give you a hard time about getting into your patrol car?
No, ma'am.
He didn't try to run?
No,
He wasn't being combative?
nope,
He even wanted you to look at those surveillance cameras, didn't he?
I don't know.
And when you arrived at the Family Dollar with my client, you were sitting with him in the patrol car while the other officers conducted their investigation, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were chit-chatting with my client, weren't you?
I believe so.
And once again, he wasn't being combative with you, was he?
No, ma'am.
He wasn't yelling at you?
I don't recall.
Okay. And once my client was transported back to the Family Dollar, he was searched a second time, wasn't he?
Correct.
And once again, nothing that the complaining witness said was stolen was found on my client, right?
I do not remember who searched him the second time.
Well, a pocket knife was found on my client, but a lot of men carry pocket knives, right?
Sure.
Okay. Is carrying a pocket knife illegal?
Depending on the ordinance.
And my client wasn't evasive when you asked him about the knife, was he? And you also found a bandana on my client as well, right?
I don't recall.
And when you returned to the store, you were waiting for quite some time for that detective to arrive, weren't you?
I don't remember how long it took.
Take about an hour?
I cannot tell you now.
But during that time that you were waiting for the detective, you were working on other reports from that day, weren't you?
I believe so.
You were typing up a crash report that had happened that was unrelated to this incident whatsoever, right?
Possibly.
And during the time that you were waiting for the detective, did you ever get out of the patrol car to see if you could access surveillance footage from that day?
No, no, there were other officers handling that part. I was in charge of the suspect.
So since you were in charge of the suspect, you didn't ever get out of the patrol car to see if there are other witnesses in the store either?
No, ma'am.
And you didn't get out of the car to see if there were other employees working that day that the incident took place?
No.
I mean, Alice couldn't have been the only employee working that day, right?
I don't know. I was just,
To your knowledge, did any officer on scene attempt to talk to any of these employees?
I cannot see that.
Do you know how many customers were present in the store when this incident took place?
No, ma'am.
House witness.
All right, is this witness excused or subject to recall?
Excuse from the state. Excuse from the bench.
All right, the rule has been invoked. What that means is you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state of defense. Do you understand? All right, thank you. You're excused. State, call your next witness.
The state would call UEDI Rolando Pettis.
All right, if you'll take a seat here, please. You raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth to help you out?
Yes.
All right, thank you. If you could take a seat, adjust the microphone. Remember to keep your voice up so the jurors and the court reporter can hear. If you could state your name for the record.
Rolando Perez.
All right, state.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Bettis, can you introduce yourself to the jury here?
Yes, I'm crime scene investigator Rolando Perez with SAPD. It's crime scene, yes.
And can you tell this jury what a crime scene investigator for SAPD does?
We go out to scenes and we document, we look for evidence, so it's document, collect and preserve evidence.
And how long have you been doing that?
About 14 years now.
And is it something that you receive training, continuing training to do?
Yes,
And do you receive on-the-job training when you respond to crime scenes?
when we started, yes, it's about a month and a half training.
I guess that was a bad question.
Okay.
Do you get experience as you respond?
Oh, yes.
Were you dispatched to a crime scene to do CSI stuff on September 28th of 2020?
I believe so.
Okay. Do you, in reference to this case, do you make a police report or a report that that documents what you did at a crime scene?
Yes, we did a supplement.
Would having a copy of that help to refresh your memory as to any specifics about this particular case?
Yes, please.
May I approach you?
Yes.
I'm handing you some paper that's been marked State's Exhibit C. Can you take a look at that and tell me if that's the report from the day we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bettis, so now that you have that, you responded to a scene on Rigsby on September 28th of 2020, correct?
Yes.
All right. And when you get to a scene like this, what are your roles? What are some of the things generally you'll do? We'll talk specifically about the specifics of them, but what are some of the general things you do as a CSI?
Well, depending on the case, it's usually we photograph first, whatever we have, and then collect any kind of evidence.
And in this particular case, did you take photographs?
Yes.
All right. Judge Bennett published some previously admitted evidence.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Pettis, some of these have already been admitted into. Oh, I'm sorry. I do. All right, Mr. Pettis, some of these photos have already been admitted into evidence. But are these some of the photos? State's Exhibit number 1 is what I'm showing you. Now, State's Exhibit number 2. State's Exhibit 3. State's Exhibit 4, 5. And State's Exhibit 6. Are so those some of the photos you took on that particular day?
Yes.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Pettis, I have what's marked as State's Exhibit 7, 8, and 9. Can you take a look at these photos and tell me if those are photos that you took on that day?
Yes.
And do they fairly and accurately depict the things that are in those photos? Are those accurate representations of the things you took a photo of?
Yes, sir.
State would offer State's Exhibit 7, 8, and 9 as evidence, pending any objection from the defense.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, States Exhibits 7, 8, and 9 are admitted without objection.
And Mr. Pettis, do you take pictures of anything related to the crime scene that you deem is worthy of, I guess, documenting, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I showed you in those exhibits that I referred to up there, a couple of different things that you documented about the outline of the store, like photos from inside the store.
Yes,
In this particular case, did you take photographs of some items that were taken off a suspect who had been detained and or arrested?
yes,
I'm going to first show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 7. Is that the photo of the things that were taken off of the suspect in this case?
I believe so, yes, sir.
I'm gonna try to zoom in because I know it's dark on dark. But if you can see on State's Exhibit number 7, it appears that there's a number of I don't know. Can you tell me what types of things that you can see specifically in State's Exhibit 7?
But I see, well, yeah, it's a lot of stuff, right? There is a knife there, there's like a headphone wiring, possible kind of card, like a debit card or credit card of some sort. And then the little papers, a flashlight.
At the top of it, we see something that looks like orange or red. Can you tell from the picture? I think it kind of looks weird on there, but can you tell what the thing is in the top part of it?
I mean, it kind of looks like a bandana.
May I approach the witness, Sharon?
Yes.
I think some of it is the function of that thing, but if you want to look at the actual picture a little closer and tell me what you think the thing in red is.
Okay, that does look more. And then,
And what color does it appear to be?
red. Yes, sir.
Thank you. And on State's Exhibits 8 and 9, this is State's Exhibit number 8. Zoom out a little bit. Okay, is that a photo of the knife that we saw earlier in State's Exhibit 7 from the bottom of that photo?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
And I'm going to show you State's Exhibit number 9. Is that also a photo of that knife?
yes, sir.
In addition to taking photos at this crime scene, did you collect any physical evidence in this case?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay, what did you collect?
I collected the knife.
And you, when you collected that knife, what do you do with it after you leave the scene? You do what with the knife?
It gets photographed, so like you see here, and then it gets packaged and submitted into the property room.
And is there a process as a CSI for how something gets processed into the property room so you know what case it belongs to and all those things?
Yeah, it's identified with a label that gets printed out with the case number and its own barcode.
And can you tell me what the case number is associated with this particular case?
The SAPD 20184841.
And in this particular case, did you log this knife into evidence into the SAPD property room?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did I ask you to bring that knife with you today?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to refer to the envelope you brought as State's Exhibit number 10. Does that envelope contain the knife that you recovered in this particular case?
Yes.
How do you know it's the knife you recovered in this particular case?
It has my initials and my badge number that I marked on there.
Okay. Can you do us a favor? Okay, and can you open this is an outer package that we're looking at, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and inside that package, is there another package?
Right.
Can you open that package, this outer package, and tell us where your initials are on the package on the inside of it?
Okay. On the back of the packaging.
And are your initials on that?
Yes,
And is it dated also?
it is.
And is this contain the knife that is in regards to this particular case.
Yes.
State would offer state's exhibit number 10 into evidence pending any objection from the defense.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, number 10 is admitted without objection.
Mr. Pettis, I did put a package of gloves up there. Can you do us a favor? Can you open up that package that you have right there and take the knife out that's inside the package?
Sure.
And can you hold up what was inside that package? All right, and is that the black knife that you recovered on that particular day?
Yes.
What type, is it a lock blade knife?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, I don't know the proper names of it or whatever, but is it one that, does it stay like that, or can you open that knife?
It can open.
Okay, can you show us how to open it and open it up? And that's the knife that was recovered on the date in question, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In addition to recovering that knife, did you attempt to develop fingerprints on the knife as part of your CSI duty?
Yes, sir, I did. Attempted.
And I know the knife was found on the person of the defendant, but were you able to get any fingerprints off of the knife?
I don't think so. Where I don't know.
So no fingerprints off of the knife were able to be developed.
Right.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Defense?
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon. Officer Bettis. So the state just went through several items of evidence that you took on the day of the incident, correct?
Yes.
And one of the photographs that they showed you is right here, which is State's Exhibit 1, right? I'm sorry, State's Exhibit 7.
Yes,
And you took that photograph?
I did.
Okay, and the state had you point out that reddish looking cloth at the top of the page, right?
Yes.
You know the date of this incident?
For my report, it was September 2020.
2020.
2020, yes.
And during that time, COVID rates were pretty high, weren't they? Or it was
Probably, yeah.
2020, right?
Right.
People were walking around with masks.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, and it wasn't uncommon for people to perhaps tie a bandana around their face to enter a store to protect themselves from catching COVID, right?
Probably right.
So it wouldn't be unusual for someone to be carrying this, right?
I guess not. No.
Okay, and the state just had you show the jury a pocket knife that was found in my client, right?
From what I was told, yes.
Okay, and that can be seen right here. Oh, I guess that's the point. Well, towards the bottom of the photograph.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But carrying a pocket knife like that isn't illegal, is it?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
It's pretty common color. It's black and silver. Most pocket knives are that color, right?
Probably, yeah.
Lots of males carry pocket knives.
I guess so.
And he also had you point out headphone wiring, which is, I guess, that blue wire and that white wire right there.
Yes,
I mean, it's not uncommon for people to carry headphones in their pocket, right?
I would say no, it's not uncommon.
I mean, people every day put those in their ears to drown out people around them, don't they?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you couldn't tell, you weren't there when this incident supposedly took place, right?
Correct, I wasn't there.
So you can't tell the jury today how that knife was used.
No,
You can't tell the jury today where my client got any of that stuff in his pockets.
correct,
And you couldn't tell the jury today if my client was wearing that bandana as a mask to protect himself from COVID, right?
correct.
And you mentioned that after you gathered the knife and went back to the station, you tried to process fingerprints, right?
Yes,
But you weren't able to lift any fingerprints.
right.
And were you aware that that knife was allegedly used that day in an altercation?
No, I wasn't aware.
Okay, and when someone's grabbing a pocket knife, they leave fingerprints behind, right?
Depending where they grab it, yes.
Okay, well, I'm sure he wouldn't grab it from the blade, right?
Right.
So it would have been on the handle.
Probably, but the surface, it's not a printable surface.
Okay. Pass the witness, Judge.
David,
No questions for him, may he be excused.
all right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Excuse, Judge.
All right, the rule has been invoked. What that means, you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state and defense. Thank you. State, call your next witness.
May we approach, Judge?
Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you your lunch break right now. I'm going to ask that you be back in the jury room by 1:30. There are plenty of places downtown. My understanding it's not raining. I think the clouds have lifted. And there's also the cafeteria that's downstairs in the basement. If you decide to go as what I call it off campus, at least that's what we would call it in college, still make sure that you have your juror badges on, because a lot of attorneys go off campus as well. Remember, you've heard evidence in this case. You're not allowed to discuss it amongst yourselves or with anyone else. All right. All right, everyone, please rise.